I'd like to talk to you about a Bible passage that many Christians use as the foundation of their understanding of stewardship. Let's dive into the parable of the talents and challenge some misunderstandings and misapplications of this familiar teaching. This parable, found in Matthew's Gospel, is one of the many financial and business stories that Jesus uses to convey deep spiritual truths. In it, we meet a business owner who gives his servants each a different amount of money with the expectation that they will do with the money what he himself would do. Each of the servants understands the master quite well, and two act in such a way that he rewards them upon his return. The third servant, however, fails to act and is subsequently condemned and dismissed. Our focus will be on the third servant and what paralyzes him. The same things that prevent him from acting according to his master's wishes often paralyze us when it comes to loosening our hold on our wealth. Remember, our resources belong to the master and not to us. He's given them to us to bring blessing to others. He doesn't want them to get stuck in our hands and be used solely for our own purposes. How well do we know our master? How faithful are we doing with his resources what he wants us to do? As you study this parable, take time to, first, learn the three attributes that God's oikonomos needs to possess. Second, find out how you can hear, "Well done, good and faithful servant," from God. And third, sit and wrestle with the difficult questions offered to help you evaluate your relationship with, your thoughts about, and your goals for the financial resources that you control. As the Lord's servant, as his oikonomos, we are fiduciaries of the resources that he has entrusted to us. Because we're familiar with his character, we must invest wisely. And aligned with his purposes, we're called to fearlessly deploy resources to fulfill his Great Commission mandate and energetically pursue opportunities that accomplish his goals. Such courage builds the kingdom of heaven on earth. I hope that by now you've been persuaded that your role as an oikonomos extends far beyond financial competence and charitable giving. The Lord's fiduciary is mandated to deploy resources to fulfill God's purposes regarding the Great Commission and the Great Commandment. As we continue to understand the importance of proactive values investing, PVI, we'll now turn to some of the mechanics. Then we can effectively implement our goals of investing as God's fiduciary. There are three main umbrellas that determine how and when the investments and earnings underneath each one are taxed. Investors need to know how these categories work so they can effectively deploy their resources. Investors also need to know more about how missional investing works in both foreign and domestic markets. There's an astounding amount of money held in the account of people who follow Jesus. These resources are rarely deployed for God's purposes, and they provide returns only for some stakeholders, usually the investor. Over time, my hope is that we can turn the drips of money directed toward God's purposes into a river that floods the thirsty earth with abundance and generosity. How can we store up treasures on earth where moths and rust can destroy them, when we could be advancing God's kingdom on earth by leveraging our resources for eternal objectives? As you study, look for answers to these questions. First, there are conventional rules of thumb that guide portfolio allocations. But what alternative standards might God's fiduciary need to consider? Second, are you better able to understand your own investment portfolio and the benefits you're receiving after reading this study? And third, where can you see yourself in Charlie and Miranda's story? To act justly, we need to overcome our areas of ignorance, as well as our emotional fears, idolization, and falsely placed dependence on investments as our source of happiness and safety. God is our provision, and we can trust Him to meet our needs while we deploy resources for His purposes. So let's get started.